Right after I film this intro, I'm having my sons listen to today's episode. It has been transformational, and I'm still on fire after filming it with Jarom Woodbury. He's a professional MMA fighter turned PT who has been a regional director for OSR, and we're talking about the martial artist mindset. It is a complete system of how he has built values in his family and in his business that help transform people to help them overcome difficult times. And this isn't just a path to making more money. This is a path of how to build a team of people and build ourselves as leaders. I was so inspired. I told him at the end, this should be a book. This should be its own series. So you have to listen through this episode. At the very end, if you don't cry, let me know in the comments and I will definitely do something. I'll give you a Starbucks gift card because by the end we were both in tears, but also inspired. So this is an episode you dial in on, you go double down on. Enjoy the show. Jarom, we're talking about values today. Why did you want to talk about values? Why is that so close to the vest for you?
I think it's because it really is who defines us. I think you can say a lot of things, and people in my company know that sometimes I don't shut up. I'm talking a lot, but I like to make sure that it's aligned with what I really believe in and what I do every day behind the scenes. So values kind of ties into our own systems that we establish during our life. And what keeps us the long game. Yeah. That's kind of values for me is we're playing the long game.
So values are part, so it ties into vision for you in that way? Because I think, most people, we talk about values a lot when it comes to leadership, but we usually focus on purpose or vision, but we're going to dive into values and you're seeing it right off the bat. You're saying it's about what you believe in and it's something that's tied to vision. But if you could, could you define what values are more fundamentally? Let's say we're talking to our kids. You've got a teenager, I've got a teenager. How would you explain values to them?
For kids, and even something more tangible, an example I say is values are things that you're able to replicate daily. And they become a part of who you are and how you think more than what you say. So for example, if you really value integrity, if you really value accountability,
sure,
you're gonna just live it in everyday life. Your habits will be established around that value. So I like to tell my kids we have a warrior code in our family. We've established it from the samurai, because my martial arts background. And so we have certain 7 virtues, we call them virtues or values, that we live by, and we kind of talk about every week in our little family meeting we have on Sundays. And we talk about how we can apply these in our daily life, with actual tangible actions and habits. So we work out every morning. That's just something we do. It's
And you have a 13-year-old boy and twin 10-year-old girls?
10-year-old boy and girl, twins, yeah.
Okay, and then...
So 2 boys, 1 girl.
I didn't realize that.
No, you're good.
And then you work out with them every day?
Every morning, yep. 5 days a week,
Okay.
And that's one thing we value is just getting up and being disciplined and doing something that's healthy every day, something that's kind of hard, that creates a little bit of a callus, for your mind so you can do harder things when it needs to be done in life. So we're putting in that work every day, little things like that. Another thing we have, for example, is a value that we like to live by in my family is compassion. And so some people think of that as weakness, but we have examples of how compassion is actually a strength and how doing something to help others actually helps ourselves. And we've gone through examples of that through service. And I really believe in all that stuff. And I think you can say you believe it, but what you do every day really defines your values.
That is such a powerful shift because I think everyone's worked for companies that has values. And listen, if you even know what they are, that's rare. Yeah. But if some companies, they'll see the values on the wall, but they don't live them. Yeah. So it's in the action of the values that make the value sticky and actually applicable. So in your family, you gave a beautiful little masterclass on how you've incorporated this concept beyond the business and into your home, but you also talk about how to implement. So I'm curious about that system. You have a discussion every Sunday and you talk about the values and then you identify ways that people have lived them. And do you, I'm guessing you honor the people who, how do you, walk me through that Sunday meeting of values. Tell us first of all, list all 7 of your family values and then talk about how you work through that.
So we call it a code,
That's right. The code of honor.
Woodbury warrior code, we call it, just to be fun. We established it when my kids were younger. We kind of came up with it as a family. And so we go through a certain amount of, there's attributes or values or virtues that you want to call them. And we meet every Sunday. And we try to do it every Sunday. It can be a different day. And I assign a virtue or a value to one of my kids or myself or my wife. And we go over them and say, hey, you're going to go over honesty today. And they're going to go over that and they kind of apply it to what they're in their mind, how they can apply it in life.
So they're teaching it from a place of like, for me, like almost like a demonstration. Here's I'm over honesty. This is what I think about it. Here's what I can do more about it.
Yeah. So for example, we have integrity is our number one, right? Integrity is the first value. We have honesty, honor, compassion. And then there's other ones like courage. That's important. Loyalty, and then respect. And so we have those, and I divvy those out every week, and I'm like, hey, William, you're going to give the one to this week, and we haven't gone over, loyalty, or I'm kind of sensing is what we need to go over.
Right. Family, okay. So you use this. So you use this model as to kind of like, hey, we're kind of falling out of honesty or courage. People seem really scared and they don't want to do hard things. Let's talk about that. And they're used to it, so it's not like this heavy-handed lecture.
Exactly. It's not. It's sometimes can be kind of like off the cuff. I'm like, well, we really got to go over compassion. Like I'm seeing some horrible behaviors in our own family. And we talk about, we got to start here, And so I use that similar strategy. And like I said, with values, it's kind of ingrained into your daily life and habits, into my work. I do that with my team. We have weekly meetings with our team, And so I talk about, we have little in-services. Last couple weeks ago, we worked on communication, different styles of communication, the importance of that within a team, communicating with love, sometimes tough love,
Yeah, you go through those elements. It's interesting, Jarom. I have been okay about this with my family. Like I have a set of values. I don't think they would know what they are. We talk about them very infrequently. Yeah, sure. So I'm running my family at a poorer level than I do my companies, because my companies, we have a weekly meeting, leadership. We've had this in every company I've owned for the last 15 years. And we do exactly what your family does, where every week, another person, first of all, there's a CEO of the week. So someone else is like the CEO and they run the actual structure. And I did this initially to be lazy because I just got tired of like always being the show. And so everyone takes turn being the CEO. And then one person talks about either the purpose or one of the values. Gotcha. And they'll go through and they'll do exactly, and we'll pick things based on like what we're, so this is really a system here that helps you, because it's not like, you're just establishing this and then talking about it. And then, it's a daily reminder. Yeah. How important do you think that frequent reminder is in that weekly meeting in terms of how your kids and your company are living and integrating those values?
I think it's paramount. I've learned over the course of, leading teams and different types of people for over a decade that you can't just set something down and then let it go and expect people to pick it up on their own. There has to be, like, one of our company's core values is accountability. Yeah. And it's accountability is not just hounding someone always about how are your numbers. It's like, what can I do to help you? How are your numbers? You got to be aware of that. But like, are these realistic? Is the expectation clear? And like, do you feel like we're actually asking something that, like, not that double standard,
Right. Do you know how to, here's what we're asking. And do you agree? And do you know how to do it?
Yeah. Get into the why, I want them to understand everything about it. And so I think that has a big part with my family as well. It's like, why do you have values in your life? They're kids, they're learning. We're trying to create reasonable adults that contribute to society, right? Yeah. And so these are some things that we've come up with that will help them contribute to society and themselves and just be happier people in general. And so it takes a lot of repetition because it's hard to grasp these big, vague concepts as values, these buzzwords that you see every day. Yeah. So we're trying to define them and make them applicable into real life actions. And so I do that with my company. I do that with my family. I do it with myself. And that's why I think is how we talked about values are really is like the DNA of how you live.
I'm very sad as we're talking, and I'm being very sincere.
Not trying to make you sad.
No, it's regret. I knew these concepts. I have 4 kids, and 2 of them are adults now, and 2 of them are teenagers, 14 and 13. And I've done better, I think, than if I hadn't been a business owner, because we do have values. I think a lot of owners might be feeling this too, like, wow, I can't believe I haven't been doing this. So maybe that's good that I'm connecting with the audience that way. But it's almost this thing of like, what a missed opportunity to not have these values set in. Now, I'm also feeling a bit inspired because Jarom, I'm like, yeah, I can, it's not too late. What if I went through and created something today for my kids' my last 2 kids' high school year?
Yeah.
And what if I became that grandparent who created, and one of the things that you did that I love is how you didn't just call them values. You call it a warrior's code.
Yeah, it's a code. Yeah.
That is so cool because you're personalizing it to you and your family, because talk about the MMA background. So that MMA background that the audience has, because you were an MMA fighter and still are training.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that that ties in 100% to who I am and what I do is a martial artist, as a person, as a business owner, as a father, as a dad, as a husband. I think that you have to have a certain sense of direction, and especially when it comes to competition, especially with a competition that's as high stakes as mixed martial arts, cage fighting.
Yeah, right? I used to swim. So the worst thing that would happen if I lost was I would lose. You lose, you go unconscious.
You could get seriously injured for the rest of your life. It's almost life and death. But there is a control to it because there's a referee there. His primary job is to protect the fighters, and then to help make sure the fight is going in the right direction, and following the rules. But he wants to protect the fighters. So there is a sense of control, but the stakes are higher. And so you have to have a clear direction. You have to have a very clear mind. And so what I like to apply when it comes to mixed martial arts is, yes, a code is very important, but there's this principle, I don't know if you ever heard of it, in motor learning and development when I was an undergrad. It's when I first started competing professionally, cage fighting. I've been doing it since I was in my 20s. And like you said, I just fought about 5 months ago professionally again, just decided to just jump back in there, right? And there's this principle called the inverted U principle. I don't know if you've heard that one, but there's the 2 axes, the Y and the X axis. And as arousal starts to get higher, your performance starts to improve, right? And then there becomes a point where you're at that optimal state of arousal. And then the problem is, though, depending on the activity, right, there is an optimal state of arousal for each different activity, right? Fighting is one, mixed martial arts.
Sure.
Swimming could be another one. But you can't go out there just completely just too relaxed, right? You have to be hyped up a little bit. But if you get too hyped up, there becomes that point of diminishing returns.
Right.
Your performance starts to decline, the U starts to curve down.
The cortisol kicks in. Oh, yeah. All these opposite things, because so the adrenaline, and then it starts to maybe curve down when it gets in the cortisol level.
So when it comes to martial arts, that became so apparent to me because, and I remember just talking to different people that when I first started competing professionally, they were like, you just got to get really amped up, man, and just see red and get in there. And, and I'm like, that's not how it works,
Yeah.
Because if you get too amped up, your performance declines and you get caught. And I noticed that there was this cerebral aspect to it, and the best fighters out there, from the high level to the UFCs, and I trained with a lot of the UFC fighters at my gym when I was training in Utah at the Pit Elevated. And so I noticed that these guys weren't just these meatheads. Like, they were very smart. They knew how to turn it on to a point, but they knew that if you got too high with your state of arousal, you would start to make mistakes and you would start to let things slip. And that's how people take advantage of that, right?
Right.
So it's this high level chess game that's going on. And
with your face on the line.
Yeah. Well, sacrificing your body and your mind as well. I was very fortunate to never get a concussion. So
are you serious?
I like to move a lot. So
I'm certified in concussion rehabilitation because I've had some really tragic concussions in my own family where mild traumatic brain injuries. It's a very big deal. So that's the only. Yeah. I was going to maybe even talk to you about having our episode be about concussions, but I'm so glad we're doing values.
I'm lucky there.
So how did you get? Tell me about how that MMA background and everything you just talked about with the inverted U, how that applies to values in your family and business.
Because that's kind of what keeps your head when you're trying to fight that innate just adrenaline to just keep on letting that state of arousal keep going straight linearly.
Yeah.
You have to have something that keeps you grounded. And that comes down to the systems, the values you've had, the day in, day out training you've done. And at the end of the day, you can't just go in there and wing it in a high level professional fight. I've seen guys do it and they get lucky. There's a lucky punch all the time. But when it gets down, when you start to get tested against a real opponent, you have to have something like that to keep you grounded. I noticed that with my team when I'm working in a clinic. And I treat about 25 hours a week still. And then the other half of the days, mornings, I'm doing admin. And so I'm on the floor with my team a lot, and I get a lot of sense of kind of how that flow is, that optimal state, the flow state when it comes to treating patients in a clinic. And so if it gets too busy, that's like getting too much arousal. Like you're going to get a point of diminishing returns. And we're like, whoa, like you can sense that. If it's too slow.
Same thing.
Oh gosh, it's almost worse.
It is, in my opinion, it is. Everyone loved I've heard this quote and I love it, is that production is the basis of morale. And to your point, we could add a layer of that saying overproduction is a diminishing return, but not being productive enough is worse. People just sit around going, you know what? I don't like this place. They just start complaining. When they're busy, they're like, this is a pretty awesome place. When they're over busy, they're burning out.
Yeah. So that really made it apparent to me when I was competing at those high stakes.
Yeah.
Because if you let yourself slip, if you let those emotions take over in a professional, cage fight, you can wake up with the flashlight in your eyes,
Yeah.
and you're like, what happened, right? So you have to keep composure. But if you let off too much and you don't pull the darn trigger when you see an opening, then it's going to be a boring fight. You're going to have regret. You're going to be like, man, why didn't I saw so many openings. You'll want to watch the fight afterwards and hate yourself. So that became so apparent in that high level of a competition that when I see it in everyday life now, and I see it in my family, I see it in my team, I see it in the leadership team when we're sometimes I can see like, oh man, we're getting a little too overworked. We need to do something kind of fun to lighten the mood, or we need to pick things up. We need to kind of get the energy going here because we're starting to get in the lull. And so I put some pressure on, keep getting that production up because we know that we have a better flow state when we're relatively busy,
Yeah.
And everyone's a little different. Every team member has a different optimal state of arousal, right? Every team member has a different flow state. So mentoring new grads and then vets that have been doing it for 20 years is very, very different. And so having those one-on-ones with my team is also very important to help them find out where their flow state is, and tying that into the overall accountability aspect is like, this is what you got to be accountable, but if you do more than that, you can bonus, you can get more.
Yeah, accountability is a balance, right? Like using that value as an example is that when you teach that the way that you guys do at OSR, it's like this thing called, hey, accountability is making sure that you're productive because that's how we all are happy.
Exactly.
But if you're going to stretch intentionally, accountability means being recognized for that, and financial recognition being a big part of it.
Give you a little bit more, and then if you're just fighting to get that the baseline, then I'm going to help you with that, and then we'll work on that because some people, that's their goal. They were trying to ramp them up to what they're accountable for. And then some people are like, that's easy. How can I bonus? And we're like, hey, well, your optimal state of arousal a little higher, right? And so we kind of coach and help with getting everyone to where they want to be.
It's interesting because your approach really is a warrior-centric approach because I see in a way I'm learning so much from you, Jarom. The idea that values are, and then the way that you do the weekly meeting is a way of practicing before you get into before you get into the octagon. You have these weekly meetings with your kids, your team meetings with your members over at OSR.
Yeah.
You're building them up. I don't think I was ever aware of that, but it's true. When we talk about these values and we're like finding ways to recognize and live them when the crap hits the fan.
And it will.
And it always will, professionally, at work, at home with the kids. We have this like foundation that like is a reminder of how to stay in the flow state in the face of extreme adversity. And there's probably no greater example than MMA.
Yeah,
because all these things, like our kids go through fights, our team goes through like battles with insurance and like, patience and all these things. It's a real battle.
Yeah. I think that really became apparent to me in this last professional fight. So, fighting, and then I had my last professional fight 10 days before graduate school started, PT school. And so I remember announcing, after thank goodness I won, and we got fight of the night, so
nice.
It was a bloody battle against a really tough opponent, great guy, Jeremy Peterson. And I remember that I laid down my gloves and I said, hey, I'm retiring, but you can't just stop being being a martial artist, right? That's how I believe it. I'm not a fighter, I'm a martial artist, right?
Yeah, right.
And so I continued on through, but you do forget a little bit of that competitive nature, and that it's almost like a little bit of you got to be a little sadistic. You got to be a little bit of like enjoying kind of causing some pain because it's going to be caused to you, right? And so you kind of put that aside.
By the way, great analogy for being a physical therapist.
Yeah, I was about to say,
we love to cause, really well. We like to cause a little bit of pain, but anyway.
But we want to make it feel better in the end, right?
Right.
And it's a little different. It's kind of like the yin and the yang, right?
Yeah.
And so I put that away for 13 years. I'm developing these other very, I'd say very familiar and applicable, kind of skills in life that I had learned and started to learn in MMA. But going back into the cage last year, it was in October, end of October, I realized that there is something inside of us that wants us to fail. And it's really interesting. I call it the inner coward. And it wants to take that easy route. Some people call it resistance. I know Stephen Pressfield loves that term in his book. But I definitely had forgotten that because I hadn't pushed myself to that level in so long competitively. And I like to do something that scares me.
Yeah.
Every year, 1 to 2 things that really scare me. But this was one of those, right? But at the same time, in the first round, the first minute, I had been training this whole 7 to 8 weeks for the worst case scenario, which was this guy's a grappler. He wants to take you down. He wants to take your back. He wants to choke you out. That's how he has a 100% finish rate on all his wins. He finishes people. He makes them tap or go to sleep. And guess what happened in the first minute? I didn't get taken down, but I slipped. I did a little stupid. I don't even know. I look at it. I'm like, how did I lose my footing? I slipped. What did he do? He jumped right on my back. He had everything going on in the right way for him, right? I'm like, I got 14 minutes left of this potentially. And that inner coward comes up and creeps up and says, you know what? His arms around your neck. You could just tap. It'll be over. No one's going to be upset with you. Everyone's going to be like, hey, good job. You went out there. You did your best. You're an old guy fighting this young guy, and it's been 13 years, Immediately, though, and that was what really kind of fired me up, was immediately the other voice comes in and says, are you serious? Are you seriously entertaining that thought? Get up. And then you hear your coaches, and then you turn on all those core values or habits that you've established for 13 years, and then you just turned them on at a different level for the last 7, 8 weeks, right? And I remember I got up, I'm like, why was I even considering that? I got up pretty easy, turned around, he never got me down the rest of the fight, and I felt like I pushed the entire rest of the fight.
Did you guys go to completion?
Yeah, we went to the whole 3 rounds, and I felt like I could go 2 or 3 more rounds after that.
No way.
I was backing him up most of the fight, and I just felt like nothing against him because he was probably the toughest guy I've ever fought, but it really helped me realize, like, man, there is that inner coward that wants you to quit sometimes, and we got to fight that. And sometimes we didn't even realize it, that it's there, making us take the easy road, sleep in a little longer, don't, we'll put off your notes for tomorrow,
right.
All that stuff. It's just, that inner coward. And it's hard to recognize that. But when you put yourself in a situation that's at the high stakes of a cage fight, it helped me recognize it immediately. But I'm so glad that, like I said, when you have these innate values you've practiced over and over and over to establish through your actions, through your beliefs, your mindset, you can shut that guy up and say, get out of here.
Because you have your foundation.
Exactly.
It's foundation of and you've been practicing over and over again. Mm-hmm. You've in your weekly meetings comparing it to values. You've got your discussions with your kids or your team.
Yep.
You're talking about actions. And so when they're in that motion, and all of a sudden the enemy is literally got you around the neck.
Oh yeah.
You have that rehearsed, almost intuitive sense of no, get up.
Mm-hmm. It's almost muscle memory, but there's always going to have that I almost call it this innate kind of want or need to choose the easier route, right? Yeah. And we have to train ourselves to go the higher road, take the higher road or obviously do what we know is right, but is really not easy and kind of scary.
Totally.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, first of all, did you win the fight?
Of course. Yeah.
Of course.
I got it.
My audience. So guys, wonderful story.
Yeah,
what
so
an inspiring.
I have a 8-1 record professionally.
Okay.
But I did lose my very first professional fight.
Back when you were young, though.
When yes, and it was not a completed fight. I accidentally poked him in the eye. That's 100% on me. I should close my hands, right, with those little gloves. And it was the third round. And it wasn't a DQ, but it was like let's stop it and score it as it is. And the 2 judges gave him the fight. 1 judge gave me the fight. And so I lost that fight. And it was ruled a decision in his favor. I could have quit right there. I'm like, 0-1 as a pro. Yeah, I'd give it a good run, but I can't stand that.
Isn't it interesting? I love this idea. You went back, so going back in time, back when you're a young man, you're getting started, you failed the first time.
Oh, yeah. And it's disgusting.
And you wanted to be done.
Uh-huh.
And you felt, I'm sure all the feelings we do, I'm not trying to put this into your experience, but just the idea of when we fail, how bad we feel. Like we just don't want to do, that voice gets louder of, just be done.
Yeah. I hate it. I will tell you, there's nothing worse than losing something that's specifically one-on-one and even not being able to finish it because I did something illegal, because poking a guy in the eye. But I think that nothing fuels you more than losing if you have the right mindset to learn from that loss. And that's what I did. I remember I fought 3 times in a month and a half after that because I wanted to just get back in there and get that taste out of my mouth. I won those, obviously. I never lost after that fight. But I'm glad I did lose, actually, in some ways, because it taught me what I never want to feel again, and to just do everything I can within control to avoid that again, and then accept it. If you can't win everything, but you can sure as heck learn from everything.
Yeah, Rockstars, Jarom just hit something I want to hit really heavy, which is this idea that when we lose, when we fail, we want to stop. We want to be done. Yeah. That's normal.
Yeah.
But the only way to truly fail is to quit.
That's true.
Because for you, it was, let's just keep going.
Yeah.
And because you chose to keep going, that failure fueled you. Because at that point, there's almost there's no middle ground. There's no well, I guess I'll kind of keep going. It's either you're completely done, I'm out, I had a one loss fight career, or I'm all back in.
Yep.
So if you don't want to fail, truly fail, meaning you quit, there's nothing else to do but ramp it up.
Yeah.
There's no other choice.
Because
there's something beautiful about the fact that our failures polarize our decisions. And sometimes in life we quit, and that's when we truly fail. But even then we can learn.
Yep.
But I just want to highlight what's possible in this example of MMA, of how when you turned around and said, no, I'm going in, it turned into this thing that fueled your whole future and is still affecting you decades later. And it's affecting the way you raise your kids and your team and the way OSR is being shaped. It's because you're not hiring people OSR, you're not raising kids, you're building fighters. Excuse me. You're building warriors.
Yeah.
Because you're not fighters.
We call them martial artists. I think there's a difference because there is an art to it. Your medium is violence and combat and not paint or clay.
Martial artist.
Yeah. So we call. I like to. I mean, yes, martial artists fight. They do. But I love the analogy, or I guess there's a quote that is attributed to Sun Tzu, but we don't know exactly who said it. But it's better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in the war. And I always say, we want to learn these skills. We hope we never use them, but we want to know that we have the confidence that we can go into situations with being protected, physically as well as mentally, because most of it is mental. I think that's about 90% of it at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you have your fights, but you're also training people. Obviously, you're training your kids.
Yep.
Literally training them in every way.
Yeah, they do jiu-jitsu, boxing, Come on. And then they train at the gym that I coach at, Proving Ground MMA in Surprise. But then I have actually, it's kind of crazy that the law of attraction, it works in crazy ways. But I've actually, since I started working, I have 2 martial artists that work with me now, and I did not know that when they applied to the job. One of them, I train at his gym now, and on Saturdays it's called Legion MMA, and it's amazing. And they helped me get ready for my fight as well. I was splitting my training into 2 gyms, and so it is kind of crazy how it does kind of bleed into every aspect of life, and sometimes we're unaware, and that's why I love to just I have a little journal I do at the end of the day. It's a gratitude journal, and I write down 3 things I'm grateful for,
Sure.
Just a little bit of reflection at the end of the day. It's 2 minutes, maybe 5.
That's the Benjamin Hardy gap in the gain concept.
Exactly.
This is by the way, for people who don't know this concept, this thing that Jarom's talking about, if you write down something that you're grateful for, a win from right before you go to bed, it programs, they've done studies, it programs your subconscious to actually look for more success.
Oh, yeah.
And there's an organic gain that occurs in life just because you start programming your subconscious to be successful.
Yeah, I literally wake up feeling more optimistic. And it also helps me just reflect on I am so grateful that I have this person in my life. I am so grateful I have a bed to sleep in, you know, and it gives you a good state of mind, you know, but it also helps you realize those little things that have kind of like ingrained themselves into your life without you noticing it.
Yeah.
And I think noticing it is it's like a delight. You know, it's really fun to have every day to do that.
Yeah, and you're training, obviously, those people, but then you train people at your office. I almost want to call this thing the martial artist mindset.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The martial artist, MAM, because you have this thing that you're doing with your kids that's literally martial arts, and you're creating these warriors.
Yep.
Same way at work, not so much the physical, but then you're also still training other martial artists.
Yes, yeah.
So you're training across the board in all these different elements. How does training other people in this mindset help enforce your value set?
I think it, like we talked about, values, accountability is one of the values that I have ranked pretty high.
Me too.
And it helps me stay accountable because it's really easy when you get to a leadership position to kind of take a step back, you know, and try to, you know, I don't have a problem with delegating. Actually, really, that's one thing I'm really working on hard, because I did hate that at first because I want to just do it myself, right? It's easier to do it yourself.
Do it right.
Or it's, you know, it shows more, you know, better example to just work hard, be the hardest worker in the room. But at the end of the day, you realize your limits and that you're more valuable as a leader than you are as one of the fellow employees or team members, right? And so when it comes to martial arts, being accountable is a huge part of, or I'd say being more competent is a big part of respect when it comes to martial artists. So not that I'm 40, going to be 42 this year, and I'm not going to be able to hang with some of the young guys forever, right? I like to do it. I still like to play around with the young guys.
Yeah,
and
knock them out here and there.
Give them a little run for their money. But I know that's not going to last forever. But I think that's not only what they see. They see that you're there day in, day out. You're still competing at the levels that you can, because especially in jiu-jitsu, they have masters competition, right? Where the old guys, you know, see the guys with the gray hair in there, but they're still, and it gives a lot of respect. The young guys are like, man, like, look at those guys still going at it, you know, at 60 years old, you know, there's still guys that are competing with other 6-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that helps me, having this martial artist mindset helps me keep myself accountable, because I know others are watching. I know that my kids are watching every day. You know, they're watching me. Does dad wake up and do his ice bath this morning? You know, is dad working out? You know, and you can say all you want to kids and your employees, but it's really what you do and what you tolerate that they see that makes you who you are. And so with martial arts, it's very similar. You go in there and, oh yeah, he can say this, but can he actually do that? Or did he actually do that? Yeah. And so your martial artists, my students see that. And I try to inspire them with my actions and my actual daily habits. I think it helps hold me accountable.
Yeah, to build a warrior, you have to demonstrate the life of a warrior.
Yeah.
You have to live it. And then, you know, we all understand this concept that the best way to teach leadership is through example. Mm-hmm. But what I love about your description is how it's tied to the value-based.
Yeah.
I've never seen that before, how our values are what we do, or heard it in this way, to where it's like your values are what you choose to do in life. And you creatively and intentionally create those. And that's where the words come in. Integrity, courage, whatever those words we choose to be, but they define and describe actions. And those actions and descriptions are going to vary. Like your take on accountability, even though we share a passion for that value, is going to be different, because the flavor that I subscribe to is based on my background, how I was raised, what I care about, things that I'm looking for in the future. I think our vision does play into the shaping of these values in some way, but it's all about just like the connection I'm seeing between the language we use, the actions we take, and the example we set. So again, the language we use, the actions we take, and the example ultimately that we set reinforces that cycle over and over again.
Yeah, I like that way to put it, because it makes it a little more clear, and it involves, I think, the whole concept. Like sometimes we're talking more because we can't do much, right? And we're educating and employees, patients, family members. And then sometimes we're doing something with them. We're going on a hike with them. You know, you're doing the exercise with your patient, right?
Yeah.
And then I think a lot of it is that sets the example to yourself first. I think it builds confidence when you're actually practicing what you preach, and it solidifies the value. And then also I think it does the same to other people.
I love it. All right, Jarom, this has been such a phenomenal discussion. Before I do my rapid fire questions, I always like to end on some rapid fires.
Yeah.
How do people get a hold of you?
So I have, OSR Physical Therapy is the company that, professionally, you'll get a hold of me there, right? I'm at the Sun City Clinic 1 to 6 every day. Well, Monday through Thursday. Fridays we get out early, so I'm there in the morning and we're out of there by 1. But when it comes to training, I'm at Proving Ground MMA or I'm at Legion MMA. There's one in Surprise.
Proving Ground MMA, Legion MMA, and then OSR Physical Therapy is one of my favorite Arizona-based physical therapy practices. I'm good friends with your CEO, Aaron Williams.
Good guy. I love that guy.
Really, it's a privately owned, very powerful business. I get nothing for saying any of this stuff. So for anyone who's listening, I loved how you guys have culturally built something that promotes the industry and the therapist in a way that, like, when most PTs are like, should I become a PT? This is where you guys are thriving. And yeah, man, that's so exciting about that. So what's your email, just in case people need to get hold of you?
Jarom Woodbury at OSR Physical Therapy.
And I'll put it in the show. And I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
All right, rapid fire questions.
Oh boy, here we go.
Okay, what's the most painful thing that's happened to you in one of your fights?
Okay, well, that's actually really interesting because I wouldn't say it was in my fights because
somewhere in your training or whatever.
Because in the fight I have broken toes and fingers and I did not know it till afterwards.
Okay.
And that's very common. I have broken every single finger and toe.
Oh, jeez.
I've broken my nose 4 times. I've dislocated both of my AC joints. I have no right ACL or meniscus.
Hey, thank you for curing the slight desire I had before you started talking about joining MMA after our discussion. So anyway, so lots of things.
You do it long enough, you will get injured.
Yeah.
And so a big goal of mine is to help martial artists work through those injuries. But when it comes to pain, I think probably the most pain I've ever had when it comes to like an actual injury, like a physical injury, would be I was just training and I got picked up and slammed onto my shoulder and I tore my right AC joint. And I knew it right away. You know, when you hear that crunch, crunch, and your shoulder rolls over. And it's not the initial impact that hurts. It's when you stand up and your arm doesn't do what it's supposed to. It just hangs there like a zombie arm. So that pain is not fun. And then the lingering pain after of aching. But honestly, it's not I don't mind physical pain. Probably that's why I do what I do. But it's very uncomfortable and it's just annoying. I would say it's annoying. You can't sleep, and stuff like that.
Okay. Proudest or happiest moment in your MMA career? Like, what was something that stood out to you?
I will tell you, and I might even cry, but after my last fight, just looking out in the stands and seeing my kids.
Oh, geez, you're going to make me cry about that.
I know. They were I had never fought with my kids before. When I'd fought, I didn't have children. This is the first time I'd fought with my kids, and just seeing them just so happy and my coach being like, man, he whispered to me, dude, you're like a superhero to your kids now. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I realize the impact it has on not just me, it's not a selfish thing, but sorry about that. Yeah, that was probably the most proud I've ever felt. I wasn't proud of myself. I was just so proud that they were able to watch like their dad do something very scary. And they were kind of like a little nervous and scared before for me, I could tell. But just seeing it afterwards, I was like, oh gosh, I'm so glad that I didn't let that inner coward take over, right?
Gosh,
sorry about that.
I sure hope, never apologize for that. Everyone who's listening, just want to highlight this powerful lesson that you just taught around like what's possible when we don't listen to the coward.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because at the end of the day, as parents, this, it's an imperfect journey.
Yeah.
It is the most challenging thing I've ever done as being a parent.
Oh yeah. That's easy to say. Yep.
So right. To have those moments where we rise above as leaders and we have something of an example that we can be proud of, that they can take pride in. The pride is the fact that we chose to do something hard so that those people that we love more than life itself can look at that and go, you know what, my dad, he gets back up.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, man. Awesome. If you were to write a book about this whole topic, what would it be called?
Oh, goodness. I'm kind of liking the whole martial arts mindset, I don't know.
Just so you know, when I said that, I literally thought after this episode, I'm going to ask him to write that book. Oh, that's why I came up with that question. These rapid fires are always done on the spot, impromptu.
I like it. Yeah. That's
so,
a good one.
All right. Somewhere in the world that you're excited to go, or somewhere in the world you've been that you've really loved.
Okay. So when I talk about it, I like to create systems that are, long-term. I like to listen to at least 1 to 2 podcasts a week, read 1 to 2 books a month, and then do 1 to 2 things a year that scare me, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing this year, my younger brother, he's an amazing kid. He's someone I look up to. He's turning 40 this year. And so we're going to go to Peru and do a 4-day hike and start in Cusco and go to Machu Picchu.
Machu Picchu.
So that's one thing I'm super excited to do, is just get out there, totally unfamiliar. And me and him and a few other my buddies from high school, actually, we're going to go and see if we can handle that terrain a little bit. 4-day hike should be fun.
Awesome. All right, last question. One of the greatest values, I think, of doing these podcasts, Jarom, is the fact that these are little snippets in time that, of course, your team at OSR will hear, and those 3 kids are going to hear.
Yeah.
So they get to see you frozen in time talking. And what would you like to tell your kids about values?
I think that when I look back and I reflect on values, is people think that they have to be perfect. They think that they have to, you have to have this so much pressure to live by these values every day. But I think that one of our values is honesty, and being honest with yourself that you're not perfect. And I'm not a perfect dad. I do things, I yell sometimes, I get frustrated, I get impatient.
By the way, if you ever yelled at me as your kid, I'd be extra scared.
Yeah. Well, I've never laid hands.
I'm just kidding.
But I'm saying, like, I mean, like, and I feel ashamed sometimes. But one thing I do know, and I want my kids to know, and I want other people to know, is like, there's one thing you can't be perfect about, and it's asking for forgiveness. And so I like to show my kids that. I'm like, hey, Dad's not perfect, but he's going to come and apologize to you. He's going to try and make amends. And that's one value, is being honest with yourself about your imperfections, but not letting them, just not accepting them, asking for forgiveness, learning from them, and getting better.
I love that. Jarom, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been phenomenal. And Rockstars, thank you so much for tuning in to a very special episode. I feel like today's episode really elevated not just like our company's values, but our families and ourselves as leaders, remembering to set that example, to not listen to that inner voice, and to, as always, stick to the vision. So thanks again for tuning in to the Willpower Podcast. As always, this is Will Humphreys reminding you to lead with love and to never give up. Until next time.